Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you today. So myself, on behalf of the ministry, we're very honored to be included today and to have the opportunity to network and hear from you. As mentioned, my name is Penny McCall, and I'm one of the assistant deputy ministers here, and both the research area and the livestock area fall within my area. I also want to introduce two other people from our deputy minister's office. We have Charla Hordenchuk, who is another one of our assistant deputy ministers here, and also our deputy minister, Bill Gruel, at the back. And so we're going to be around today, so if you have any questions, please let us know. And I'll also be introducing some of the other ministry staff to you as we move along. So your theme today, focusing on the future and the three pillars that Jeff has talked about, resilience, innovation, and leadership, are very, very connected to what we're trying to do as well. Now, I realize we're not going to be able to meet all the demands and needs. You've realized that over the years of asking government. But at the same time, I have to say, overall, we're very aligned. And, our role as the ministry is to really help you remove roadblocks, but also to get out of your way when you need us to. So like any good business or organization or association, our ministry also has some goals that we aim towards. And some of these that I'm going to speak to right now, and I know our Minister Daryl Harrison referenced these this morning too, but a couple of them that are very connected to this livestock sector is that, for example, to increase livestock cash receipts to $3 billion. I know that's not always a great target to have because it relies on a lot of different things, but I have to say, as a target, we're well on our way there, if not surpassed, at $3.9 billion in 2024. Another goal that I put up there is also connected with your industry, and that's about doubling meat and animal feed processing to $1 billion, and we're just past that now already at $1.3 billion. And it isn't necessarily about the target, it's to make sure that we're going in the right direction. But as you'll see by these overall government goals, it really is about growing it, feeding it, adding value to it, and then exporting it. And on all those areas, I believe we do very, very well. There was a question this morning also about irrigation, and irrigation development is one of our goals under our growth plan. And we're seeing about 20,000 new irrigated acres come on every year for the past 5 years. And so we've actually, as well, although it's not up there, we're pretty darn close to our irrigated goal. Although, again, that's capturing some of the irrigation opportunities that were ready to go. And I'll be talking a little bit later about the build that the question was about this morning. And what is our ministry's mandate? Well, I've highlighted a few words there that are really what's important to you. And that's about being globally competitive, to be thriving and sustainable as an ag sector. And again, we're very aligned here. And, we also, like you, collaborate with a lot of different partners. I know some of your partners are, we've heard of them today, the CCA, the SCA, Beef Canada. And, so I guess all together we're very aligned in doing things like having effective legislation and policy. We need to have responsive legislation that is removing roadblocks where possible and protecting us in other places. It's about having responsive programming and about sharing our research and knowledge. And one of the things that I want to hit right from the start is we often hear from the livestock sector, we don't get what the crop sector does. And based on probably magnitude of the sectors, that might seem to be the case. But I have to say, how we support the livestock sector looks differently. It might not be equal or appear to be equal, but we certainly try to be fair in our approach to managing this. For example, see here on the screen are some of the bigger areas that we've contributed to livestock lately. The Drought Response Initiative, and we've had some other ad hoc programming over the last few years due to drought. And these are some of the big ones. I know none of you want to rely on ad hoc programming, neither does government for you. But again, it's one of the areas that we have responded in times of need. There's a lot of other spends on this screen that are more proactive in nature. And I'll share in a few slides a little bit more about that support. But first off, I do want to get into what we're hearing from you. It's very important, as myself and those in the room that are public servants, as well as our elected officials that you heard from earlier, we have to keep current. And it is why we keep coming to events like this. And so there's a few challenges that I'm going to talk about that I've heard on your radar. But already, based on the presentations I've heard so far today and tomorrow, I'm only going to touch on the tip of the iceberg. And of course, if there's one thing we know for sure, is that more change will come and more challenges will come in our future. So one of the areas that we've heard loud and clear from you is livestock disease concerns. And I have to say that is one of the biggest things that keeps me up at night. And I know the people that I work very closely with. As you're aware, TB, bovine TB, has been found in our province 2 years ago and then late last fall. And it's resulted in devastating impact and personal hardship to those farms. The traceback activities on TB continue, and as we peel back that onion layers, we are finding other cases. And so this is a long, difficult, hard thing for our industry to go through. And not only is it impacting that current farm, but we know the ripples are wide. And of course, everyone's concerned about our international markets as well. A couple other diseases up there. I mean, anthrax. Every once in a while, it literally, rises up again to cause an issue. And we had to have some communications out this spring about risk, what do you watch for, and how to test. I heard this morning, I think it was Ryan from CCA talking about BSC, and that's still raising its head when it comes to discussions like SRM with the states and equivalency. Foot and mouth disease, hopefully not. But of course, as a province, as an industry, we can't guess on if, we have to plan for when. And international markets. This is an area, again, we're hearing loud and clear from you as well. There's a lot of different things on the horizon here. Certainly with tariffs, interesting, again, half of our beef sector is exported, and far majority of that is to the US. Our two biggest trading partners, US and China, with the tariffs, this is incredibly concerning for your industry. We also continue to hear more about sustainability standards, and I appreciated hearing from Canada Beef today about how they're getting out there with social media and trying to connect again with more of those next generations that live in a city to understand the sustainability of beef, as well as the health, the iron available directly. Animal welfare always continues to be an issue. I'm glad we don't have ostriches in Saskatchewan, but we've seen, the issues around animal welfare and disease management that's caused in British Columbia. Antimicrobial resistance and use, that's always on the agenda. And of course, what we're hearing about greenhouse gas emissions and if livestock is accountable for that. So, I also know that SSGA, Chad met recently with our trade and value added branch to talk about interprovincial meat trade as well. And so that's certainly on the horizon for your as an industry as well. And this next area is a whole gamut of things. Even though cattle prices remain really strong, we know it's as a result of compounding factors that maybe aren't always that positive. We're still seeing the impacts of the consolidation of herds and the culling that happened in 23-24 as a result of the continuous and persistent droughts in some of our areas. We also continue to hear about increasing feed costs and other demands for land and forages. And so hopefully in your room today, I don't want to sound like Debbie Downer, I'm just trying to be pragmatic, but hopefully if you're in the room today, you have something to gain from those good cattle prices. Another thing that we keep hearing about over and over is we currently have no federally regulated cattle slaughter facility in the province. And that is impacting us and you directly in terms of our dependence then on export and processing in other provinces and countries. So I know this isn't all news to you, but it serves as a reminder of the need for all of us to stay connected and communicating. And when we are at those tables, we might be speaking with a whole bunch of different voices, but I hope at the end of the day we sound like a choir. At least we have the right tone and tune, and we're speaking in harmony together. So then what is the ministry doing to help you? Well, we know we can't hide on this. And I'm just going to spend the next few slides talking through about some of the things that we are doing to support you in the ministry. Some of this is maybe more silent behind the scenes, but a lot of this is very front and center, standing next to you in the area. So I have 8 different areas that I'm going to speak to you about. The first one is communication and extension. So why do we have regional offices employees that have specialized knowledge in livestock and forage, in feed rations, in water testing, in markets, and all the latest information on other tools and technologies? Well, it's because we want to make sure that you have accessible the latest information that can help your farm to be profitable. And we want to be able to communicate that in a way that you can actually adopt it on your farm and is going to make sense. We also want to be your allies in telling the story, the good news stories about cattle in the prairies and the benefits to not just the land, but also the communities and the environment. And I'm just going to now give a call out to some of the ministry staff who are here. Provincial livestock specialist, Fanda, raise your hand. Okay, I'm going to make people wave. Livestock and feed extension specialists. There you are over there. Range management extension specialists. Any of you in the room? Not today. Egg program specialists. I know there's, yes. Agri-environmental extension specialists. And crop extension specialists. I don't think any of you are here today. But what I'm trying to say is this is a lot of the both livestock branch and our regional services branch that help support the people on the ground. And we've got a few. We've got Venkata Vaklavaranam here, who's our executive director of our livestock branch. And on behalf of the regional services, I know we have Colby Elford here as well as one of the directors. So thank you for those staff in the room. And as just a reminder, we are not usually that far away from you. I know we're used to traveling far distances in the provinces, in our province, and we have a number of regional offices throughout the area. We also have an Ag Knowledge Center. It's located here in Moose Jaw, but it's 866 call away, and that's the number there. So again, don't hesitate to reach out. If one of us can help you, they will find somebody who can. The next area that we support is around Crown land and land management. So I know we have Diana Empringham, the Executive Director of Lance Branch here. We have Helen Rudd, and I also saw Peter. Are you still in the room? Yeah, there you are. Okay, well, here's some anyone else in the Lance Branch I missed? Okay, so those are the people you can talk to about some of your Crown land and land management questions. But the ministry doesn't just administer Crown land, but in partnership with you and other lessees, they're responsible for protecting over 7.8 million acres of agriculture Crown land south of the Northern Administration District. This includes 6 million acres in grazing under permanent cover, which is both native prairie and tame. And so thank you to all of you that are here that are also stewardships of that land. The ministry is also responsible for 27,000 active dispositions, of which, believe it or not, only 6,300 of them are actually agriculture leases. So they're also involved in things like, of course, grazing, cultivation, oil and gas, and sand and gravel. And what's also interesting is the responsibility for beds, banks, and shores. And I know, so we're talking land and water, 2 very contentious topics here in the room. And I know we've had lots of questions, but at the end of the day, we are here to be able to hear your concerns. Sometimes we make decisions maybe you don't always appreciate, but we're trying to look out for the best of all of the various stakeholders. For example, the most recently amended Crown land grazing lease formula is one of the ways that we're paying attention. The third area that I want to speak to is around funding, research, and innovation. And this one is near and dear to me because I serve as the chair of our ADF, our Agriculture Development Fund Committee, that includes both specialists as well as farmers, ranchers, and agribusinesses that can provide, on-the-ground intelligence into what kind of research and research specialists and scientists we fund. In fact, next week we're having our letter of intent stage. We get over 300 letters of intent for different projects that come in. And as a group, we need to whittle that down into, unfortunately, we can't afford to pay them all. So we have to whittle that down into a few very important ones. And of those 300, over a quarter of them, about 30%, relate directly to livestock and forages. But it's not just our ministry that funds that research. I understand that it's also checkoffs from producers like you. And so thank you for continuing to fund the future. So take just one step back for a moment. The budget might sound big, $37 million in research. It takes, it's widespread, and research and innovation take consistent and persistent funding. Much of our funding is provided through the Sustainable Agriculture, Canadian Agriculture Partnership, or SCAP. And for decades now, I have to say, and I'm maybe a little biased, but when I hear from other provinces, I really do think we're the go-to when it comes to the model that we have. We have 4 areas that we fund, and those are the 4 streams up on the slide. We call it our 4P model, so partnerships, people, projects, and practices. And the important thing with this is I think we fund all parts of the machine. So it's not just about good research that stays in filing cabinets or computers somewhere. It is getting it out into the hands of those that can use it. And so I'm just going to pull out a few examples. In the partnership area, one of the biggest places we support is our Livestock Forage Center of Excellence, or LFCE. And shout out to, is Scott Wright still in the room? There he is. And just a reminder, June 17th is our field day. It's a great field day to come and learn about some of the research that's happening and see some of the cow-calf operation directly. So use that great resource. I also just want to call out VITO, a lot of funding there in terms of livestock vaccines, and also our Prairie Diagnostic Center, which is involved in not just disease testing, but surveillance. On the people side, we help support scientists in 4 main areas, including livestock and forages. On the project side, I've already mentioned ADF, and just last year alone, we supported 30 projects for $7.2 million in total. And I'm just going to pull out one of the other things on that slide. It says SRI. Yes, we use a lot of acronyms in government. SRI is the Strategic Research Initiative. And this is one we started funding 2 years ago and involves both the University of Saskatchewan and Alberta. And what this is it's about looking at carbon sequestration under pasture and forage resources. So we heard this morning from Adrian talking about the Living Labs project. And this is similar to that, but it's even diving in deeper to gather some very specific data on carbon stocks in perennial pastures and forage lands across Saskatchewan. And in fact, some of the Living Labs data is going into that as well. And why is that important? Well, because we keep having to tell our story, and we have to keep telling that federally. And the more data and evidence we can have to make good policy is absolutely critical. And so to us, it's worth investing in that to make sure we have that specific data. And last but not least, that final column is around the practices side. And this is where we try to take that information and really get it into your hands. One of the examples I want to share there is from our strategic field program. And one of the services our ministry has offered over the years is water testing. But we're also now involved in with some researchers to make sure that there's a test that's available for you to test that water for concentration of sulfates directly on your farm, right at the dugout or water body. And so you can make decisions in the moment to serve your farm. And here's just a little bit more about what we support for livestock and forage funding. So again, big numbers, but this time I'm going to focus on the bottom line. And we have 15 different research chairs that we fund through the University of Saskatchewan, and we have a few of them in the room. And so I'm going to call out Kathy Larson, wave your hand, You'll know her well. She's our beef economist, or extension economist, and very well linked into that. Bart Lardner, are you still here? I know he was here earlier, but that's a face and name you people know as well. He's another one involved in the cow-calf and forage systems that we help fund. And the other two are forage crops is Dr. Billy Gethu, and feed research and development is Dr. Yu. And a new chair, this is a joint industry chair that we are funding alongside the livestock industry. So Dr. Flavia Van Cleef, are you still in the room? There she is. And again, a very critical position to link the economics, forages, and cattle, and the system that's going to work on your farm. All right. So again, very important area. Fourth area we help support is legislation and regulatory compliance. And there's 4 different areas on that screen: intensive livestock operations, animal health, animal welfare, and animal production. And so that's heavy stuff, right? And when it comes to legislation and regulatory compliance, it's always about the balance. We know we need regulations in place in order to protect what you do, protect the land, the environment, and to ensure that you have the right and opportunity to farm, and that there aren't some people out there that are ruining that reputation for you. But we also have to make sure that those regulations are flexible enough to allow for change. And it's a lot easier for our own provincial legislation to make those changes, still not easy, but easier than it is to work on those federal type of regulations. And so just lately, we have come through some significant amalgamation of some of our regulations. We now have the Animal Protection Act and regulations. And I know there's a question this morning about livestock brands, or sorry, lifetime brands and some concerns around that. There was some clarity provided in those regulations, but it isn't anything to be worried about. So if there's a question later, I know Catherine Tanita is in the room here, and she can help answer those questions that you might have on that. Number 5 area is effective programming. And again, I give a shout out. We have Mark Anderson here, Executive Director of our Programs Branch. We have Dawn and Autumn, 2 people that support that Programs Branch. And as I mentioned, we have Agriculture Program Specialists in the room over there. And Michelle, yeah, as well. Yeah. All right, so thanks to all of you. So what do we do through this effective programming? So there's a number of different areas that we support that are up here on the screen that are specific to the livestock industry. And again, this is one of those partnerships we have with the federal government and under SCAP. And so although we get federal funding for this, we try as best we can to do significant consultation with the industry to determine what programs are going to make the most sense and incentivize the best behavior and economic benefits here in the province. And so I'll just mention 2 of them on the screen here. One is FRWIP, Farm and Ranch Water Infrastructure Program. How many of you have used that program in the audience? Great to hear. This is a very important program, and so I'm glad to hear it's very critical to make sure you've got water access, not just for your own cattle, but to get it out into those more regional areas. Another really important program is RELP, which is the Resilient Agriculture Landscape Program. And this is kind of a group of programs that funds a lot of BMPs, or those best management practices. And of those, if I understand, it's the forage seeding one that's the biggest uptake, especially tame, but also native as well. Is that right? Yeah. So another important one to use. One I do want to call out on here is animal health and biosecurity. Now, this is an important program for you to help prevent and mitigate some of those diseases that might be on the horizon. So that is one. If you have questions, there's people in the room to be able to help you with that. The 6th area I want to talk about is market development. And there's a lot that's included into this. Although keeping front and center in markets is always important, it's never as relevant as now. Like, again, going through what I'm hearing around the tariffs and our two biggest trading partners right now with tariffs is very concerning. And so, of course, people are looking to diversify markets. And I have to say that, that's always been top of mind, whether it be cattle or livestock or any of the value-added components that we produce here in the province. It is about telling the story and getting out there and selling that. And so, our minister, our deputy minister, our premier, and also the Minister of Trade and Export Development are very active in this area. It's why we do international missions, and it's why we invite people here, including the Canadian Western Agribition. Another area we support is there's 9 international trade offices, and we have boots on the ground that are working for the province to be able to help tell that story, which is incredibly important. And if any of you have traveled, use those offices to help connect you with people on the ground. And of course, all of this helps attract new investments into our province in livestock processing. And fingers crossed, we're going to have a federally regulated processing plant here. I also do want to recognize what Ryan talked about with CCA's role. They're very active in this area. But again, what I appreciate about SSGA, SCA, and CCA is that you can get into tables and rooms that we always can't get into as a province. And so, that's why it's really important that we're working in tandem again to make sure our story is being told. The 7th area is relevant policies and advocacy. And so, again, maybe this is some of where we're a little bit more behind the scenes, but we're very active in what we call FPT, so federal, provincial, territorial working groups. We have a DM table, we have assistant deputy minister tables, and we also have first ministers that meet to discuss these important topics from across Canada. I, as regulatory ADM, I sit on a number of committees. And, it's interesting because I'm very proud to be able to communicate that Saskatchewan voice at the table. Are we always listened to? No. But we're asked for our opinion, and our opinion does matter. And so some of the conversations that I'm having at these tables deal with things like foot and mouth disease. So again, we have to plan for the when, not the if. And so we're looking to, in Canada, to have access to vaccines for foot and mouth disease. We know we need a bank, and we know we need to be able to access vaccines quite quickly. And that's an area that's going to cost a significant amount of funding, and of course, we're saying that the feds should pay for it, but we will be at the table when we need to be. TB, I've already talked about bovine tuberculosis. This is one of great contention right now, and of course, I've heard about the compensation concerns. We have calls with CFIA, and we actually have one next week. And some of the things we're going to be advocating for is better communication with those producers on the ground. We need advocates for those producers to really understand what they're going to and to help take this complicated science into making something relevant for their operations. Another area is around lack of lab capacity and other resources. And I know everyone's labor is always a challenge, and CFIA is no exception. But we need those right people saying the right things and supporting us on the ground. And of course, compensation remains an area of concern, and trying to level that playing field to recognize some of the beef genetics that are being lost, and making sure that on-farm practices can count. We also, at that table, talk a lot about HPAI, highly pathogenic avian influenza. And although we've been fortunate here in Saskatchewan in terms of protecting our cattle industry, it is certainly a concern for our poultry industry, and we know that it can spread into other areas. And we also hear at that table from Animal Health Canada, which is a group that works closely with government, industry, and both levels of government to be able to be that voice and to provide good recommendations for the industry. And the 8th and final area I want to talk about is risk mitigation. So the slide I have up here right now, I'm not going to spend much time on. Risk mitigation is a big bucket. We have BRM, business risk management, and non-business risk management areas that we focus on. So risk mitigation is really about what tools can we have in place to help manage those challenges that we really cannot control. So it's a big task. I know that SCIC has a booth here, and Janelle Kuntz, I haven't seen her yet, but she will be speaking tomorrow to this. We also have Jeff Morrow, President and CEO of SCIC here. He's at the back. Give a wave, Jeff. Any other SCIC people in the group? Right now, I don't see any, but they'll be here tomorrow. They're the people that you can talk about, but you did hear a little bit about it today. But the areas that I do want to just spend a little bit more time on for risk mitigation, there's 4 of them here on the slide. So of the non-BRM side, the emergency preparedness is one that's very important. It's hard to prepare for something you don't always know is coming, but you have to plan for it coming regardless. And this can be things like foreign animal diseases, it could be food safety issues, other weather-related incidents. Sometimes you don't know, you wake up and you don't realize what you're going to face that day. So I'm really proud of the team to being nimble and being able to respond to some of these emergencies. For example, like to thank our Chief Vet Officer, Stephanie Smith, but I also know we have Tyra here in the crowd, who's another vet. Wave your hand, Tyra. And very important work that they spend keeping that lines open with CFIA and helping on the ground. Another area is disease surveillance. And this is one where we work again with industry and also a prairie diagnostic lab to maintain these and make sure that we have the information and we know what's coming so that we can respond. Traceability, also very important. We need to know what animals are out there. That's why premise identification is so important. So if you haven't, remember to sign up for that, because in areas of emergency, we need to be able to respond accordingly and get in touch. And the last area I put here under risk mitigation is irrigation as well. And this is where it's not just what I'm going to call those lower hanging fruit I talked about in the original slide, where there's already water bodies there. We know we need to expand our irrigation infrastructure to really capitalize out of, for example, Lake Diefenbaker. And it was mentioned this morning by Minister Harrison about expanding the West Side Irrigation Rehabilitation Project. And David Cooper, do you want to give a wave? He's with Water Security Agency. Sean Jakes, are you still in the room? No, I think he's gone. So these are people that we can ask specifically about that, the irrigation build and the work that's underway. But I have to say, again, a lot of heavy lifting behind the closed doors maybe for now as we figure out the economics and how we're going to pay for this joint provincial and farmer partnership. And the last slide I just want to leave you with is to help you to respond to emergencies. We have now created a new livestock emergency webpage, recently launched in 2025. And this is the place to go to when you're not sure where to gather information. So it's kind of a one-stop shop is what we want it. It contains guidelines to assist first responders and producers who are preparing for responding to emergencies involving livestock. And I know Owen Third is in the crowd. We work quite closely with LSS and some other groups to be able to put this information together. Emergencies can mean anything from wildfires to trailer rollovers to disease outbreaks. And I know recently with the fire in the northern communities and the concerns around Torch River, for example, that's one of the areas that looking to perhaps evacuate some of the cattle, and information on those will be put into this website. This website also includes mental health resources for everybody involved in the response. Because an emergency happens, you jump right in and you get involved in the work you have to, and you maybe call animals that isn't always easy to do. But after the emergency is sometimes where you realize the shock of this, and that's also where supports are really going to be important. And so I'm going to end it there. And is there time for questions or not? Oh, well, we have 3 minutes, but no, we don't have to cut into coffee. But we'll be happy to take questions later. I think I've made a number of people in the crowd wave, and I'm happy to redirect questions to whoever's the best to answer them. And so with that, again, thank you. As a ministry, we're proud to be able to partner with you in the livestock sector. Thank you for the opportunity.